Hello and welcome. Thank you all for joining us here today. I'm Nick Rohn, Director of Technology for the Asset Leadership Network, and I'm excited to have Christina back. Christina Benty, former mayor of Golden, British Columbia, Canada, and she was with us. Maybe Mike will come on and say when she was last with us, but it's really fun every time we get to talk with her, and I'm really excited because we've been having a lot of technology and process focused programs of late, which is really important. The technology is now there more than ever to support the mission of organizations. And Christina gets to the heart of the real problem, the human problem. And so more in just a moment. We want to thank ALN patron members, Jacobs, Mantech Onuma, ABS Quality Evaluations, and CGI, as well as all our organizational members. And we're really excited with these members and the activities we get to participate in and amplify their work. But if you're out there wondering how we could work together, please reach out. We would like to increase this list as always. So thanks again to all that. And upcoming events, we have May 22nd, that's next Thursday, kind of an overview discussion from our book club that's been going on for a number of weeks and months now on Nexus by Noah Yuval Harari on information systems up to AI. And that's with CEO Jim Dieter. So going to be a great program. And then the following Thursday, we have Lindsay Ziegler from the Andrew James Advisory Group and also from the U.S. delegation to ISO TC 255, reporting not from Oslo, but on the recent meeting in Oslo, Norway. So that, and then in June, we have ALN Insurance Asset Leadership Board launch with a leveraging enterprise asset management to optimize property insurance and risk. So a bunch of really good upcoming events. And we just want to again highlight our upcoming training, A55K training through the Andrew James Advisory Group, tested by the ALN. So lots of opportunities. We hope to see you all soon. And now let's get to it. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, thanks, Nick, for all this a preview of what's coming up. And I want to add just a couple of things. The Oslo meeting's going on right now, so that's kind of exciting. And then the insurance, ALN Insurance Asset Leadership Board, boy, are they taking this serious. They have already submitted their presentation and want comments. It's gonna be a full hour program. And they are getting into the nuts and bolts of how better asset management will help you not just reduce your insurance or position you to reduce insurance, but give you benefits. I'll save it for them. And then Nick, if you could go to the training program, Kimono Numa has agreed to provide a special case study program for the June 12th through 13th training session. And that's going to be a real powerful example of how advanced technologies tie into helping you with asset management in ways that you didn't realize were possible. And
Mike,
yes.
there's a question already in the Q&A about what framework to recommend for First Nations. And I think we have a lot to say about that, and especially this A55K training could be a great place to start to get familiar with the ISO 55000 asset management standard.
Excellent. And I think that question about First Nations is because Christina has brought some of her fans with her. Must have gotten out on social media, and people know that Christina, I put her website in the chat to help people get familiar with the services that she provides now that she is not a mayor. She goes around and helps other municipalities understand asset management. And the reason why we like Christina coming back like time and again is because she understands asset leadership. So welcome, Christina.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here, as always.
So good to see you.
I never turn down an opportunity to talk about asset management.
Yes, and the way you talk about it is asset leadership. And just a little bit more about your background before we get into this. I said that you had been the mayor, but an impressive part of that was you got a master's in leadership.
Yeah, so So I did a couple terms on council and a couple terms as mayor. And during my time in office, it became apparent to me that we were, as a community, we were asset rich and cash poor. And nobody was talking about replacing all of the assets that were providing services. And so when I went to do a Master's of Arts in Leadership from Royal Roads University and end up doing my thesis on asset management and community engagement. So I was able to use my community as a living laboratory with the intention of how do we change the narrative in our communities around the relationship between, like, local government provides services, they require assets to provide those services, and those services are things that residents rely on every day, not like every single day and all day long. And so those assets and services need to be managed appropriately. And the relationship then with our community matters in terms of how we shift that narrative to help them understand that what they're paying for through their local taxes is actually for services. And so to marry the relationship between services, service levels, and then the cost to provide those services. So that is that's where my thesis took me. So it was really, really interesting. And some of the things, maybe I'll speak for a moment about some of the things that emerged from that, was it became really apparent to me that folks in my community had no idea, first of all the services that our local government provided, and then they had no idea what it actually cost to provide all of those services. So that relationship wasn't there. So part of my job, I saw as mayor, was to marry the relationship between assets, services, cost, into and that relationship then with taxes. So that was my intention. So then when I left office, I left office as an asset management evangelist and started traveling across the country, uh, talking to elected officials and speaking with senior management teams on how to build an asset management ethos in your organization and why it matters and that everybody has a role.
How are people receiving this?
So that's a really good question, because what's been interesting to me is that there is a lot of, like, when I speak about the challenges around the infrastructure, the underinvestment in our publicly owned infrastructure, I get lots of head nodding. Right? Everyone agrees that's not the problem. I don't get anybody arguing with me that that's not true. However, the challenge is translating that into behavior, because there's some very, very difficult decisions that need to be made. It's difficult as a politician to say, run on a platform that we're going to build our reserves so that we can replace our assets at the rate that they're wearing out, so that we're not negatively impacting future generations, and saddling them with this the underinvestment. Like that takes a lot of courage to stand up to your community and say that out loud, because what happens in elections? What are you going to do for me? What, like, I want more. I don't want to pay more, but I want more. And
Oh,
so,
of course, technology is the solution for everything.
yeah,
No, it's not. That was being facetious.
well, and that actually leads me to something I've been thinking about, and particularly when I was thinking about this conversation this morning, and what did I really want to say? One of the things that came to me is that we're trying, with asset management, we are trying to solve what is a leadership challenge, with technical solutions. Now, I'm not saying you don't need the technical expertise. I'm not a technical expert, right? You need to have great software. You need to have the data collection. You need to be able to do your condition assessments. You need a policy and a framework. But that's all true. However, what's really needed, and if you don't have this ingredient, you're hooped. And that is leadership. The courage and bravery to say that our assets are starting to age out and we haven't been having the proper conversations internally and externally. But so internally with our staff and externally with our residents around the cost to provide the services and the need to replace the assets that provide the service in a systematic fashion. So I'll give you an example. One of my clients, I was having a conversation with them recently, and they were talking about the fact that their frontline staff who deal with the assets every day, they knew things were falling apart. They knew that they're existing at 95% reactive, right? In terms of caring for your assets. They knew that that was going on, but it wasn't getting that message wasn't going up and down the system, right? It wasn't reaching the people who needed to, it wasn't reaching the decision makers. There was a number of barriers to that. So because it wasn't reaching the decision makers, they had an ethereal idea that, yeah, our assets are aging out, but they didn't actually understand how bad it was. Like, can you imagine if you expected your car, if you were 99% or 95% reactive on your car, you just wait for it to break down and then you deal with it? Like that's ridiculous, right?
And that's
And
a
yet
human
that's kind of what's
behavior.
happening.
That's a human behavior issue. That's not
Yeah.
a technology. So do you have any visual aids to help people understand the importance of not being reactive?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I do. I have some visual aids. So let me preface this with a little story about a community that I'm working in. So I partnered with a boutique engineering firm who does works mainly with smaller communities under 10,000. And they're doing the data collection, they're doing the condition assessments, they're mapping out all of the assets. But what I'm doing is I'm doing the educational piece. So I'm educating council on what is asset management, why does it matter, what's your role? I'm educating the staff in terms of what their role is and the importance of them, even the frontline staff, understanding the principles of asset management so they're able to articulate that to residents when they come in, but even just to understand it as they're part of the system and they shouldn't be left out of the conversation. And but I'm also, and here I think is where the magic lies. I'm facilitating their community meetings. So I'm facilitating community meetings that highlight to residents what is the role of local government in your life? Why does it matter? Why do your elected officials have challenging decisions that they're going to have to make around their infrastructure investment? And what is your role as a citizen? So part of that is to change the community narrative to help them to create that relationship between we get all these services and there's a cost to it, right? And if we want to maintain those services and grow our community, then we need to maintain the core assets that are providing that service. So I'm doing hosting the community meetings to build awareness, and it's been really, really successful. And I'm hoping to kind of have a ripple effect out into the community. But here was the magic. So I'm facilitating this workshop. The CAO goes out to his car and he brings me back a gift. And he brings me back this old piece of pipe that was dug up.
Yikes.
Like in 2025. This is not an ancient artifact. It was dug up in 2025. And to bring this into the room and say to residents, this is what your underground assets look like. And this, like, you don't want to be getting water from this,
No,
right?
no. That's probably one of the most important professional gifts you've ever received.
I was laughing because I was like, I was so excited when they gave it to me. I was like, this is the best prop ever. And I was like, this is absolutely, I think so. Here's where I think it really matters is how do we tell stories using pictures, images, appealing to, we often focus on here's the data and here's the charts and the graphs and the numbers, and then it feels overwhelming. You take one image, everybody was looking at the image, they were taking pictures, they were like the energy in the room changed instantly. And I thought that was really, really fascinating. um and and just to watch just one. So I think what's really important is that is storytelling, like telling the story of what is the future of our community if we just ignore things, and we can, like, that's a decision. If you're
Yeah.
like, I think that's a poor leadership decision, but it's still a decision.
Hmm.
These things don't happen accidentally. We pretend they do, but it's not accidental. It is intentionally ignoring and what is becoming into our conscious. And I think that's part of how I see my role working in communities is how do I make the unconscious conscious, and then help communities into what's the inspired action then from that. Once you've made what is unconscious conscious, now how do we take action?
Well, you mentioned storytelling, and before Nick comes in with some of these questions, um, you have a storytelling about water services, waste services that were being impacted because people were flushing the wrong things. Can you give us an example of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of my clients was telling me these stories that their wastewater system was being impacted by people flushing diapers down the toilet, and flushing wipes down the toilet, and so they were looking at having to replace a significant amount of their infrastructure, and they were like, "Why don't we just do a communication campaign and actually let folks know that when you do this, you're actually like, it is costing you, your household, X number of dollars to replace all these assets that are being ruined by something as simple as flushing wipes and diapers down the toilet," which again
Adult
seems
diapers.
ludicrous, but it ended up, the communication campaign changed people's behaviors, and they used pictures. They used, this is what it looks like when diapers and wipes get stuck in our pipes.
Oh,
And I know it's gross. And here's the staff, and they had a picture of the staff, like, with this terrible look on their face and pulling out stuff and unclogging it. And the campaign worked, and it changed people's behavior because it was an image.
excellent. That we need lots of stories like that. Nick, you want to come in with some of the questions?
I just saw though someone was asking how do you get people to attend in a community that's relatively hands-off? How do you inspire attendance? And maybe you were getting into it a little bit with the storytelling. I think that's a big piece of it.
So you're right. It is challenging to get folks to attend. One of my commitments in the community was that so we used all the channels. We used the local newspaper, the radio, we used social media. But what we did do also is I walked around the streets and I handed out invitations. I walked into businesses and I said, "Hey, this is here's who I am. Here's the conversation we're going to be having tonight, and it impacts you. If you live here and you use the assets, you need to attend." And so I think sometimes we underestimate the impact of face to face, and the impact of a personal invitation. So I told all of council, I said, you need to invite your friends. Like, don't be shy. Invite your friends. I said, I'm going to be wearing I'll protect you. There's, but um, but just like that face-to-face invitation, and really highlighting to folks that yes, this does matter. I can also, and this is from a time when I was at mayor, one of the things I did is partnered with the Chamber of Commerce, and they sold wine, and we had some goodies, and this was for our budget, and it was, and so my tagline that I was going around the community with is, come for the wine and stay for the budget. And it worked. We had a room full of people, like we'd never seen any kind of attendance like that before. So sometimes utilize your communications department to come up with some creative, edgy communication tools is, I think, really helpful. But never underestimate the power of just going and inviting somebody, or inviting a group of people. And so the other thing I would say about that is, when it comes to community engagement, because this was part of my research, is sometimes we had an open house and nobody showed up, right? And I think that you can't give up. There has to be ongoing engagement and creative ways to get people involved. But don't just use the come and I'll tell you. Have community engagement sessions that actually, like I used roundtable discussions in some of these workshops, just asking, what are the assets that are important to you? Like, what services matter to you? Now that we've just done a little education on what all those services are and what all the assets are, what matters to you? And then having a discussion about, well, what matters to your neighbor? So if you're a senior, then you have different services and assets that are important to you. If you're a parent of a young child, the state of your sidewalks is going to matter, right? Like, can I safely take my child on a sidewalk that's not going to give him brain damage while I'm walking, walking him in the stroller? So, like, helping people connect the dots between the services they use and the fact that they live in a community, so everybody has different needs, different values, and how do we make sure that those values are taken into consideration? And that's where the leadership piece comes in, and the human piece comes in.
So how do you do that? You've got a room full of people. Some say playgrounds are important to me, and others are saying the assisted vehicle to come pick me up and bring me to the doctor important. What are some of the things that you've experienced to resolve these?
So I think part of what's really helpful is, again, getting everyone in the room and having the same conversation. So when seniors are talking to young families and they hear, hey, it's really important to me to have lots of parks, they're like, oh, okay, that's why we're investing in lots of parks, right? And then same thing with young people. Like, I think, again, we underestimate the fact that when we see people face to face, we realize actually that we are interconnected, and that communities are diverse. They're made up of diverse people with diverse needs, and that our well-being is tied up with one another. I benefit from a community that has both young families and it has seniors. So I sometimes think about that, like, my kids are all grown up, they don't use the school system. But I pay school tax because I benefit from an educated public. And so I don't complain about that. I mean, obviously I have to, but I think those are important. And when you see that, oh yeah, I'm not just an individual, I am a person, as I'm part of a network, part of a community, and how we behave with one another, how we relate to one another really, really matters. And this might sound a little, this is where it's so much easier to come up with a technical solution than it is to sit in a room face to face and have a conversation about what matters. That takes time. But this goes back to, we're trying to solve the relational leadership community problem with technical solutions, and we're not having the right conversations. So cultivating an environment where we're having conversations about what matters, and then telling the truth. Like me receiving that pipe and then showing it to the residents and saying, right now we're collecting data because we're going to find out how many of your pipes look like this, and it's going to cost a lot. But our intention again is to make the unconscious conscious, so that at least we are talking about the right thing. If you're burying your head in the sand and you're ignoring what is under the ground, then you're not having the right conversation. If you're ignoring the state of your recreational center roof, if you're ignoring the state of your sidewalks and roads, you're not having, like, you're just burying your head in the sand and you're not telling yourself the truth. So political leadership, to be able to speak truth, but it's not just political leadership. It's political leadership to the community, but it's also internally. Do the frontline staff have an environment where they're able to say, we're 99% reactive and this isn't working, and the services are at risk? And so you need to communicate that to your elected officials and make sure that they understand that if they continue along this trajectory, they're putting the community assets and services at risk.
Christina, you do it better than anyone at connecting not just the data-driven, this is about using information to help the community, but not leaving the community and human element out of it. I think a lot of people really stop short in the more technical process, technology, policy and stuff, and really just meeting people face to face where they're at, continually keeping channels of communication open, asking people what is important to them, connecting it to their own lives. It's so important. Jim Dieter, CEO, has a question about how communities can come up with money to kickstart asset management efforts. If you have any guidance on that.
So I'm from British Columbia, and the communities that I'm working with right now are accessing funding through UBCM.
What are those initials stand for?
Sorry, the Union of British Columbia Municipalities. So if you're in Canada, there is Federation of Canadian Municipalities funding for asset management, awareness building. Again, BC has the Union of British Columbia Municipalities. There's funds, but my guess is that there's money out there. I would encourage folks to search for that, and then really, but also to lobby funders for the leadership component, like not just to have an asset management plan and a framework, but to have interorganizational and interorganizational and intercommunity engagement. Because otherwise what you're going to see is every time you have an election, you're going to have folks, I'm going to vote for that guy because he said lower taxes, and but it's like, well, what services are you going to cut? Again, so the community narrative needs to shift. And so I would say lobby the funding organizations to ensure that leadership and communication component is built into the funding stream.
And then can't you also make the leadership part of something that may be happening already? So the US has the Infrastructure Act that freed up money to do things. As the head of a community where a new road or sewer is going to be built, can't you just implement asset leadership practices and have meetings and say which roads are going to be torn up, and maybe won't do that, and involve people even though there isn't specific funding for this general asset leadership activity?
That's a really good point. So one of my recommendations that I make for my clients is make sure on every staff report it includes a who needs to know component, right? A communication and component. And at least it leads to a discussion where, is this a decision where we should be engaging the community on and helping them understand it better? Is this a decision that's going to impact other departments and we need to involve them in the communication strategy and deciding, are we going to engage the community? Are we going to educate them? Like what is the, like really getting clear on the why that matters.
And the who.
So that's an internal, I would say that takes political leadership to ensure that we're going to include a system-wide educational component or engagement component into particular decision making. So when you're looking at system-wide, it could be the internal system, or it's the external system. Because like I said earlier, your frontline staff who are dealing with the assets, they know way more than you think, and someone needs to ask them. Like the number of times that I've talked to frontline staff where they said, and I've asked them, okay, what if ignored is going to pose a problem in the next 5 years? And they're happy to share the information, but the other thing that they say to me is that nobody's asked me this before. And I'm like, why not? Like it seems ludicrous that's not again, that there isn't an ethos of honest, brave, clear communication within an organization.
So one of the ISO 55001 to-do activities is involve all relevant parties. And what you just described is sometimes it's staged, where the relevant parties grow as the project or the activity goes on. But you're talking about that it's the second item on the list after focus on the mission. And the second one is involving people. And I think it's probably some people are putting their head in the sand, but then also some people just don't realize this. And that's what the Asset Leadership Network is trying to do, is educate and provide insights so that people can reference what others are doing, accelerate these best practices that you're bringing throughout Canada. And anyone in the United States, Christina can fly to the United States. We want her to be involved in a project in the US.
Yeah, I think that again, this whole narrative shifting, I would love to really change the conversation so that people see themselves as part of the system and not have this us and them mentality, right? I jokingly used to say that I was one of those residents that, what do I pay all these taxes for? And I pay all this money, and what do I even get? And then when I was elected, I suddenly became them. Right? Because you're on the other side of the table. But I soon realized it was like, oh, okay, wow, all of these assets and services cost a lot of money, and we're not maintaining them appropriately. And if we want more, then we have to, and we want to maintain the services for future generations, then we have to look after the assets that provide the service. We have a moral obligation, a social obligation, a political obligation, a generational obligation. Like and so I think that making sure that is embedded into organizational practice is that, again, that really requires leadership. And it's not an us and them. There's one taxpayer, and it's either coming out of your front pocket or your back pocket. So let's figure out how we're going to make sure that our dollars are spent on the kind of communities that we want to live in. Like, I want to live in a community that has flowers and signage and parks and trails and is lovely, but I don't want to sacrifice the water and the sewer and the roads and the garbage and recycling. I want that all, and there's a cost to that. So when I see that all of our well-being is tied up with one another, you stop that finger pointing, that bloody local government, look what they're doing. It's like, actually, let's look at this as co-creators of the system. But again, that requires leadership and conversations, and it's way easier to provide a technical solution when, but it isn't. But here's the other thing is it's actually not working.
Yeah. Yeah. Technology has not solved our problems.
No,
It is
no,
going
we have
to
a
be,
human problem.
yeah. And part of that human problem is being addressed with what you're doing, which is education. And the finger pointing can kind of go away when we educate people that democracies include all of the people. All of the people are part of the government, and they're choosing to be a voter, or they could be a candidate. But whether you're a voter or a candidate, you are the government. There is no, if you're blaming the government, you need to point the finger at yourself because you're part of the government.
Yeah.
But then the other thing is the actual education about what is working. And one of the things that we've done is establish the Asset Leadership Network pilot program to do small examples of what our members do so that people can understand the value of expanding that. So that's a way of starting to set up to the audience. We want a local government to involve Christina in a pilot project, and we'll actively reach out to our colleagues at the Government Finance Officers Association and see what we can do to marry you with some of our other people, because we're not saying throw out technology. We're saying use technology in a human oriented manner.
Yeah. If I think we tend to pride ourselves on, oh, we're rational, pragmatic, and we've got this rational approach to information, but that would mean realistically we would then be replacing the assets at the rate that they're wearing out, and that's not happening. And so until it's marrying both the technical aspects of the data, the information, but also marrying it with our human proclivity to ignore what's right in front of us and forget it. I want to say one more thing. You said something that I think is really key, and that is I'm a big believer in starting community gratitude campaigns. Right? I think local governments ought to do a way better job of bragging about the services that they provide. And I think that they fail to make that connection. I have, as you can tell by the kind of person I am, I will have conversations on airplanes, at gas stations, and restaurants. And yes. When I'm talking to folks, and they, oh, you work for the government, I hate the government. I was like, how important is water to you 7 days a week? How important is it that you flush your toilet and it disappears every time?
Yes.
And that you drive on roads that are relatively safe. And then you start helping people connect the dots and help them to see. I jokingly said one time, I said, 10 minutes with me and I'll have you hugging your politician and kissing your tax bill.
Well, so much of what you're saying is directly related to the book Nexus, Information Networks from the Stone Age to AI. And it's been our first discussion club
nice
book that we've studied. And next Thursday, we're going to be kind of concluding with an hour-long overview of what we have gotten out of it and how that applies to asset management. And yeah, I find it very fascinating that you're right on point with this New York bestseller.
Nice.
Well, thank you so much. We went over with no problem. Everyone has stuck around. People are fascinated. But I just thank you. And I'm serious about let's figure out a way to get somebody to do something with you that we can then amplify and get more people doing maybe just a gratitude campaign for a city or something like that. But let's do it on the US side of the border because we really need you over here too. You've got too much energy for just one country.
Ah, that's awesome. That's great. Thank you. Well,
So
thank you so much for having me. It was my pleasure. Like I said, I will never turn down an opportunity to talk about asset management and, of course, marry it with leadership. So
excellent. Thank you. Thanks you to our audience. Nick, you want to wrap up the show for us?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a real pleasure with Christina Benty here, former mayor from Golden, British Columbia, Canada. And thanks to our patron members for helping making a program like this possible. Jacobs, Mantech, Onuma, ABS Quality Evaluations, and CGI, and all our organizational members, especially the Andrew James Advisory Group, for putting together this A55K training that we really highly recommend for people who just want to.
Benty.
What's that?
We got
Oh, yeah.
Christina's logo there too.
Oh, yeah. And strategic leadership solutions for Christina Benty. And again, we want to grow this list. So please reach out. We really think our members do amazing work and we can connect you in ways you might not have yet considered with some really powerful both technology and human solutions. So, and with that, we hope to see you all soon. We have a number of upcoming programs that you're free to get involved with, and head to our website for more highlights or information on these programs. And with that, we'll say, Mike, got any closing words?
Just how much I enjoy representing the community, this network, to be able to talk with people like Christina and the fire that is brought to really important issues. It's very satisfying. So thank you, Christina, and thanks to everybody. Bye for now.
all right. Thanks, Mike. It was really
Thank you.
fun.
It's always fun talking with you.
We'll talk soon.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.